Hey there, this is Molly with another astrology teaching video to help you better understand this wide world of astrology and all of the different glyphs and symbols that go into it, as well as how to look at a natal astrology chart. So we're going to talk about Prince today because I think that not only was he phenomenal as a musician, singer, artist, performer, everything that he created and gifted us with, but he has a really special chart. As you would expect with someone who has so many talents and has so much to do in this world. So the first thing we do is we start by looking at someone's sun sign and where it's placed in this whole chart. So as a quick review or introduction, the astrology chart is broken up into 12 different houses here. 1, 2, 3, okay? And then each of these is a planet. Out here are the planets in this chart. And then in here are the astrological signs, all right? Over here, AC, that means ascendant. Up here, MC means midheaven. And I'll talk a bit about what each of those means. But the first thing we do is check out where the sun is. Now, Prince is a Gemini. Okay, he was born June 7th, 1958, 6:17 p.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. So all of these details are important in setting up this chart. And so the sun was at 16 degrees of Gemini. And this puts the sun right here. It's actually right on the cusp of the 8th house. I don't know if you can see the arrow right there, but it's right. We're going to put it into the 8th house. So sun in Gemini in the 8th house. The second thing we look for is the moon. Prince had his moon in Pisces in the 4th house. 4th house, okay? And then the third element we look at in a chart is the ascendant or rising sign. And his ascendant was at 16 degrees of Scorpio. So we look at these three parts first because these are the first three things that we look at to determine the personality's energy. Its main energy. So let's look at each of these. Sun in Gemini is very smart, cerebral, inquisitive, social, has lots of thoughts, lots to say, lots it needs to express. It's a teacher. It's information, words, data, details. It's a lover of knowledge and understanding and learning. So that information in the 8th house, well, the 8th house is really private, and it's where we keep our secrets. It's where we go deeper into the human psyche. So this tells us that not only was Prince really smart, but he was all about going deeper into what was under the surface. He wasn't interested in what was flaky or gossipy. He was interested in what are you doing? What are your secrets? How do you work? What are you like under the surface? This is the house of counseling, of psychology, of secrets. It's the house of sex and death and taxes and transformation. This is why he was always changing throughout his career and his life, is because this 8th house is the house of transformation, and it's associated with the energy of Scorpio. And so you put together these pieces and you can see that this is someone whose mind was all about going deeper into understanding what was happening in deeper levels of himself and in others. Mind games. He was actually known for testing people. He probably had an amazing memory, and he looked to see if people remembered certain things, what they thought, what they saw, what they recalled. This is someone who wants to get to know you on an intimate level. So there's a lot of passion here. There's a lot of drive. Money is important. Money is very important in the 8th house. The money that we have to owe other people and the money that we make. And he was known for being a shrewd businessman, for being in control of the finances, for being in control of everything he did at Paisley Park and on his records. I mean, this is someone who was really about the money and making sure that his ideas were made money. This is definitely the placement of someone who's about business. All right. So then the second thing we look at here is the moon. His moon in Pisces in the 4th house is very intuitive and very private. The 4th house and the 8th house, these are both very private places in a chart. This shows us someone who wants to be alone in their own space, in their own energy. The moon in Pisces is a mystic. It's an intuitive. It's someone who really taps in at higher levels and who feels things deeply, feels them very deeply. So he has a strong energy. The Gemini energy is very strong for the cerebral thoughts, social talking, all these ideas and things spinning around in his head. But the moon in Pisces is someone who needs time alone, who needs to be in their own space. In the 4th house, this is the house of where you live, your home, sacred space, your private environment, where you go to retreat from the world. And so this tells us that he really had the daily need to be alone, to listen, meditate. And this is where he got his creative energy from. The moon in Pisces, when it's tuned in, highly creative from other realms. It listens to get the inspiration and the ideas. So that water sign there for him would mean that people didn't know how sensitive he was. He was much more sensitive than most people even realized. And that's because he had a very tough exterior and he was very much in control. And that leads us to the ascendant. The ascendant in Scorpio is, this energy is actually related to what I just spoke about in the 8th house. So the ascendant with a Scorpio is also known as a rising sign. So Scorpio rising or the Scorpio ascendant, it's a fixed energy. It's very much about being in control and being the person who controls their image. The Scorpio rising is usually magnetic and magical, and it has a strong power that just emulates from it. It's captivating. It's like that you can't help but look. That's what Scorpio rising is. It attracts things into its energy field. It's also the energy of transformation. But what's interesting about Scorpio is that it doesn't want to change unless it's forced to. It's the energy of transformation, but it's usually because something dies. There's a death, whether that's a physical, actual, literal death, or a figurative, energetic, spiritual death. So when someone has a strong energy of Scorpio in their chart, such as Prince does, they go through many different reiterations of their life. It's almost like they get the sense that they live many lifetimes in one life. This would be too where his image was very important to him, and having the control to declare who he is, to say, this is what I'm about, and this is how I will exert my power. Scorpio rising doesn't mess around with that. It's all or nothing. He could probably also give off the vibration that he liked you or he hated you. Scorpio rising doesn't go halfway. It's all or nothing. Either they love you or they despise you. It's a very also an intuitive energy, emotional. The emotions could have been big at times. You know, he did have the music to channel all of that. But this is someone who really had it was almost like he knew the power of emotions and how to make sure that he was communicating his own power. I mean, there's a lot of power in his chart here. So I would guess that in his business dealings, he was very much all or nothing, and that he was very much all about his way or the highway. And, you know, Prince ran the show in Prince's world because the Scorpio energy doesn't play around. Now, that is the stronger energy for him. But then you have this moon in Pisces that is actually really, really gentle and caring. And he honestly didn't want to hurt people, but there was a need for control. So why is that? Well, you look here, the sun in Gemini is opposing Saturn. Saturn in Sagittarius. This is his relationship with his dad, which if you saw Purple Rain, if you knew any of his history, that was the relationship that struggled against his self-identity. His dad believing he should be something else. His dad believing that his worth was in one set way. It's like this is the person who had to fight his father to demonstrate his self-worth. And he didn't feel that. So he learned at a young age to control what he could control in his environment. And that really is a huge signifier here in his energy. So I don't think that Prince really trusted a lot of people, and it probably was hard to get close to him. The Gemini energy in his chart, so can be two different people. You knew him in one way or you knew him in another way. The sun in Gemini is ruled by Mercury in Gemini. Again, very smart, probably remembered everything, probably had so many ideas. I mean, this is why he was such a creator, is because his mind was go, 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 go. It's just someone who even doesn't, their mind doesn't turn off. He has his Mercury in Gemini squaring his moon. So what's interesting about that is that in relationships with people, he didn't always know how to express his feelings. He didn't always come from his heart. There was a sense of, I can say something that they'll understand and that they'll like me, but I don't know if they understand my true emotions and my true spiritual self. Because the moon in Pisces is very spiritual, and it needs that on a daily basis. In fact, it needs nothing on a daily basis. It needs to sleep, nap, meditate, and tune out on a daily basis. And so he could show up and be social and talk with people, but I would guess that he always had to have his own space. Now, a few other things about Prince's chart here that I think are quite phenomenal. Right up here, the midheaven. The midheaven is where your professional world, your career, your how the world sees you, your expertise, how you are known in the world. The ascendant is how people know you when they meet you, but this is your public image up here at the midheaven. And so Prince had Leo as his ruling sign of his midheaven. And right there, sitting conjunct on his midheaven, is Pluto. So his midheaven here is at 29 degrees, and his Pluto in Leo is at 29 degrees. This is power. Again, it reiterates this whole theme of power in his world, in his life. The power over his creativity, the power over how he shows up in the world, and his and how he will be the one to decide what he does, what he commits to. This is, again, running the show. So we have three strong energies in his chart about being the one who had to have power. But that's because he was here to leave a creative dent in the universe. The Leo energy is all about creating from the heart and offering your light, your unique spark, the way you do things to the world. And so that Pluto energy there gives it such strength, such power, such determination. It doesn't compromise. That's another signature of his chart. There's not really room for negotiation or compromise. It was so set that he was here to really do some big things. Now, this energy of the Pluto in Leo is opposing, it's actually near opposing his moon. So this is power struggles with women. Women in your chart, the moon in your chart is women and the mother. And Pluto is how you feel powerful. So the real emphasis here is that it shows up as the inner power struggle between this private, sensitive self and that need to be powerful and get attention in the world. And so for all the ways he could be on stage and be out there, there's a part of him that needed to not do that sometimes. And I bet that it really showed up in his relationships because the women in his world would represent this Pisces nurturing energy, and it would be set off by that deep drive and deep desire to be recognized. So anytime you have an opposition like this, you know that the person was going back and forth in their world with their worldly commitments and their inner world needs. Now, the other things you can see here is that we have Mars. His Mars is in Aries at the 0 degree point. I mean, that's incredible. Like, that's the maverick, leader, pioneer, because Mars is ruled by Aries. So that means it's naturally comfortable in Aries. It's the initiator. It gets things started and going and moving, and it has this need to be impulsive, impatient. And it's at 0 degrees, which is at the beginning of the zodiac. This is called the Aries point. This is one of the most powerful energies that there is. And to have Mars and Aries here, this is a very sexual person. This is someone who is a go-getter, who does not stop. They don't know how to stop, and they don't want to. They just want to keep it moving. So there's a very strong masculine energy here. Very strong masculine energy for ambition, drive, and moving. Again, that relates to sexuality and desire. I mean, you can see all that in his songs, but also in his private life. This is a very sexual person here. Next up, we have Venus in her rulership of Taurus. So this is the love of beautiful women, money, beautiful things, luxury. The Venus is how we receive. It's our feminine energy. So for all the strong masculine energy, he also had the strong feminine energy that wanted to have beautiful things and wanted to enjoy the best in life. And this is also the musician. This was the need to make beautiful music, because Venus in Taurus is all about our world and our earthly senses, our 5 senses here. So that is strong in his chart. And then we have, as I mentioned before, the Mercury in Gemini, which is the placement here of Mercury in Gemini is also its rulership. So he has these 3 personal planets that were all in their rulership. This is really rare, super rare. Unless you were born around the same time as him, this doesn't happen very often. And so Mercury in Mercury in Gemini is the talker, thinker, information. This is the person who has all the ideas and information and ideas. So you have somebody who's really in sync with so many things. This is rare. It's like these energies really, for the most part, they play together beautifully. Mercury in Gemini then makes a sextile to Mars and Aries. So that's, again, taking all these ideas and putting them into action. And then telling people about what he's doing in the promotion and the getting things out there. The moon and the Venus energies working well together. There's a sextile here. This is, again, the feminine energy. And he really needed supportive women in his life. I don't know if he had that. I don't know if he got that, but he really needed supportive women who could be there for him and really nurture and support his feminine energy. Now, that's not to say those women can't have their own things going on, but his chart has such a caring energy to it that you wouldn't normally see. So we have the strong energy here of the Scorpio, power, control, money, and the strong energy of creativity, action, ideas, information, and just a sense of so much to do in the world. One more thing to touch on here is that, I talked about how his sun was opposed by Saturn. And so this is the issue with his dad, and how that was a struggle, and how that really exaggerated even some of the feelings of, how do I prove that I'm worthy? Well, this Saturn energy of his dad makes a trine up to his career and profession. So this actually gave him, that relationship with his dad gave him the drive to succeed, gave him the power to say, I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm going to do it my way. It was a gift. And that's what you can see in astrology, is you can see how these things, maybe it's a struggle on one level and then it's supportive at another level. You can help make those connections. So it's quite the chart, quite the dynamic chart. It's one of these charts that we could keep talking about because there's so much going on. The other thing here is how his sun in Gemini trines. We have Jupiter in Libra. That's beautiful. That's people loving him. That's, yeah, I mean, this is supportive relationships here. Jupiter in the 11th house is the audience, and the audience loved him, and the audience loved what he brought and what he said and what he sang and what he created, and also supportive energies of giving back to others, the humanitarian, the one who would be there to help people, the one who would be supportive and giving, the one who wanted other people to do well and to succeed. There definitely was that part of him. Jupiter in the 11th house is charity, is the humanitarian who gives back to help more people. So really lovely aspects here, really lovely things. And, just another way that we can see how people are complicated. I mean, look at all these energies, right? There's a lot going on here, and it can be hard to understand someone. But when you see their astrology chart and you see the pieces of them, and then you see how all these pieces of them are talking, that's what all these lines mean, is how how the planets are all talking to each other. Well, you start to see that, there's a lot going on. And if you can understand that, it really helps to understand yourself better as well as other people. So I hope you learned some good information from this chart. And also you can get celebrity astrology charts at this website, astrotheme.com. If you want to look up a certain person or check out what their chart is, this is a good website for that. So thank you for joining me. Hope you found this interesting, and I'll be back with another teaching video very soon. Thanks.